Well, South Africans have been puffing away legally for the last 6 months. We want to explore what the impact has been on our economy and our health. Has been good for us. There's still much more work to be done to regulate cannabis. We are the third country in Africa to legalize weed in some form. It's widely cultivated across the country for both domestic use and export. Joining me now is Cliffe Dekker, Hofmeyr Director in the Employment Practice, Michael Yeates. And in our Cape Town studio is Cannabis Expo Director Silas Howarth. Very good to have both of you with us. Silas, I'm going to start off with you. I guess business is booming.
Business is definitely booming. Cannabis is big business, there's no question. And we've seen from the huge response we had from our first expo in Menlyn in December, and with a huge attendance, 15,000 people coming through the doors. Now we're in Cape Town this Thursday to Sunday, and we've got double the amount of exhibitor stands, businesses from across the cannabis industry.
And tell us a little bit more about what it is that people are looking for and the sort of businesses that are there.
We've got, there's everything from the agricultural side of cannabis right through to the health side and the recreational side as well. So we've definitely seen a marked interest, increase in the interest from international exhibitors. Quite a few international exhibitors coming on board. We had a few at the first expo in December, and now quite a lot here. So, but really, it's a melting pot of the cannabis industry here in Cape Town at Grand West.
Michael Yeates, are you surprised at the enthusiasm for this, or was it a bit of a no-brainer?
Not at all. I think the explosion of the cannabis revolution, so to speak, is long awaited. I think if you look at what the international trend is, I mean, there are certain countries such as Australia and Switzerland that have all legalized cannabis in some way or form. I think you've hit the nail on the head to say that cannabis and our law has got a lot of development to do, and a lot of it has to deal with obviously cannabis use in the workplace, but also cannabis use in the public sector or sphere rather. If you think about
and sorry, the law obviously in the workspace, because it's something that we've never had to deal with before, so therefore it's not there. And how do you deal it? How does it differ from being junk, for example?
Well, correct. Look, the Occupational Health and Safety Act requires of all employers to ensure that their employees are sober at work. The law requires that you don't allow an intoxicated employee onto your workplace. Now, look, you've got to look at horses for courses, so to speak. Obviously, an employee that operates heavy machinery has got a higher duty of care as opposed to an office worker. But employers really need to see if they can regulate their workplace in terms of their own requirements, in terms of their applicable policies and procedures. And
what about workers who carry weed into work?
Well, look, work still constitutes a public space. When you look at the judgment in the Constitutional Court, the court says that persons may have possession, cultivate and use cannabis for private use. You can't necessarily have that in a public space, and if your workplace policy says that you are not allowed to have any cannabis on you, then obviously you will be contravening a workplace rule. The biggest consideration is you have to look at each case on its own merit, and whether the amount of cannabis found on a person, is it really for personal use, or does he perhaps have a little bit too much? Is he dealing in the workplace in cannabis?
With empty pockets at lunchtime.
Correct.
Silas, I'm just wondering if people's perceptions of cannabis have changed in the last 6 months. I mean, there are obviously two schools of thought here. Many people concerned that this is a gateway drug. Have you managed to change that, or are they in fact spot on?
I believe perceptions are certainly changing. I think that's why it's important to have an expo like the Cannabis Expo, where people can actually come and see the different amazing benefits to this incredibly versatile plant, and also learn. We've got a convention stage with industry experts from local and international industry experts talking every half hour throughout the Expo on different topics. One of them is actually about workplace rules and how we can actually get around people using cannabis in the workspace. So it's a really informative Expo, and that does certainly help change perceptions, we hope.
And Michael, the health benefits, I mean, that's always been something that's been pushed and that probably helped it get to the stage that we are at, aren't we, legalizing Dekker. I mean, where does that sit legally? Because I know many people are selling oils, but you can't advertise it. What's the problem there?
Look, South Africa is signatory to the Single Convention on Narcotic Drugs, which regulates the use of cultivation and the selling of cannabis for medicinal or research use. Now, if you have a prescription, there have been studies to prove that cannabis does have some health benefits, but obviously, due to the intoxicating effect, it is also abused. It's also a social drug, so to speak. So the important aspect around it is how would it influence a person to exercise his or her judgment in the workplace, their ability to perform their work, or even whether a person who is intoxicated would constitute either a danger to himself or fellow employees or the public, for instance. Mm.
And Silas, tell us about what you're hearing from the sort of commercialisation of cannabis, taking it away from the rural communities who could really benefit here. I mean, how do you balance the two so that big corporations can benefit as well as locals?
I mean, it's certainly a balancing act, and it's the same thing in many different industries, not just with the cannabis industry. But there's so many potential benefits for legalization of cannabis, allowing the people to actually grow cannabis legally, not just for personal use in their homes, but actually to grow it and sell it, whether it's locally or on the international stage. There's huge potential for job creation in South Africa and to really uplift the economy. So we've seen that in many countries around the world, in many states of America, where it certainly has had a positive effect on the I should imagine it'll benefit
that can certainly tourism as well. South Africa's got a pretty good reputation for good, strong Dekker, so that should attract people. I was also interested in reading about Coca-Cola, for example, wanting to put it in their drinks. I guess you're going to see everybody jumping in on it, right?
It's amazing. I mean, we've already just here, we've got a local beer. We've got local energy drinks that are cannabis infused. We've even got, at this Expo, we've got a company it's called From the Barkery, that has cannabis infused treats for your dogs and cats. So very interesting. It's a very interesting space to be in at the moment.
And is that legal at the moment, Michael? And also just give us a sense of the tax implications of this. Look,
it's really difficult to determine. I mean, SARS will tax whatever it can, I suppose. The obligation really falls. I suppose the implication of this is how it would affect a person's ability to perform work or go to work, and persons really have to educate themselves around the effects of these drugs on them, and more particularly the detection periods, because with cannabis, the biggest problem that's causing the biggest headache is the fact that the drug is detectable in your system long after the intoxication effect has worn off. And we don't have reliable tests to determine level of intoxication. We do have reliable tests to determine presence, but not intoxication yet. And we need to strike that fine balance between allowing for these rights and to ensure a safe and civil society.
So keep it at home and away from the children. Michael Yeates, Silas, Howarth, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Up next, a look at your international travellers' weather, and should we allow independent candidates to run for president? We also talk about the lessons learned from a film that shows Michael Jackson as a sexual predator.